Greetings, Ivy Artists. This is Ms. A. Today I want to introduce a few artists to you who are dealing with climate change, with environmental issues, so really looking at the environmental crisis that we're in. It's not as boring as it sounds. They're actually super exciting artists because they're really on the frontier of looking at art and science and the bridge between those two, and using technology to innovate, find new ways to create in a much more environmentally aware way, to draw our attention to the fragility of our environment, and to offer alternatives to our relationship with nature, which obviously has to change. So the first artist that we're going to look at is Ólafur Eliasson. He is an Icelandic Danish artist. He's a bit of a rock star. He's very, very famous. One of the most famous works by Ólafur Eliasson is the Weather Project, which was a gigantic sun at the Tate Modern. So he is a very interesting artist who really works with mainly elemental materials. He works with light and water and air temperature, and he's very much influenced by people like James Turrell, Bruce Newman, and Robert Irwin, and these are actually really some of my favorite artists as well because their work is so interesting. But he works with a lot of these very natural elements to create experiences for his audience. These experiences provoke emotions as well as create a visceral kind of reaction, and this of course is a lot more effective than listing statistics of various crises around the world. So the audience basically is interacting with the art, which is based on a lot of the statistics of things that are happening in the environment. In that, he also references nature in many different ways, you know, everything from creating actual rainbows to mimicking some of the patterns included in nature. So for example, the helix in the DNA structure, etc. So there's a lot of references. Some of them are very literal and visceral, and some of them are more kind of geometric or abstract in his work. Now, a lot of his work is installation, and some of those installations are huge and extremely expensive. So his work is very much collaborative. He collaborates with a lot of experts around the world, mainly I would say architects, but also engineers and craftspeople and writers, other artists, etc. His work is on a very large scale, but it's also collaborative with others. So there's a sense of a whole community in a way creating these huge installations. Incidentally, I was in Iceland last year and I tried to get into his studio. I thought it was open to the public, and sadly it isn't. But you know, he is based in Iceland, but I think that was just one of his studios. I think it's in Berlin, but a very interesting artist. Eliasson approaches his theme in many different ways and constantly reinventing the way he draws our attention to, again, our relationship with the environment, with what is going on, the crisis that we're in. So for example, he discovered that there's this non-toxic powder called uranin. Plumbers use it, so it turns water a fluorescent green color. And he would randomly just kind of toss a little bit of it into a river or some body of water and provoke that emotion or visceral experience of people because they didn't know what was going on, you know, why is it this color, etc. But it's again just to draw our attention to how we are so very much connected to nature around us. So he's got some pretty interesting ways of exploring this huge topic we should all be concerned with. So I think if you are dealing with issues of the environment, our crisis, he's a very interesting artist to look at. He's well established. There's a lot of videos of him, so he's easy to research. and I'm pretty sure that he's someone who can help you generate a lot of different ideas. The other thing I'm going to say is, because his work is so huge, don't worry or don't feel like if you're looking at his work that you have to produce these like mega installations. This is not what it's about. It's about you, again, creatively applying what you learn. So, for example, if you are looking at Eliasson, how can you look at his ideas and his executions of those ideas and do it in your own way, in your own scale, within your own limitations? That's the challenge. Because I've actually recently recommended to someone, and he's just like, there's no way I can produce this kind of a highly produced installation. This is not what it's about. It's about you looking at those ideas and finding ways to create work that references his ideas and his ways of creating that work, but doing them in your own way within your own limits. So the second artist that we're going to look at is Maya Lin, or Maya Lin, I'm not sure how she pronounces it. She's an American artist, originally I think from China. She very much approaches nature as architecture that she herself, who is kind of like a designer slash architect, is inspired by. She basically says that nothing she can ever create can be as amazing as natural architecture. So she's also influenced by Japanese gardens, the Hopewell Indians earth mounds, and the American earthwork artists from the 60s and the 70s, who are actually a really good reference if you are interested in creating environmental artwork that deals with these issues. I would recommend that you look at those as well. Their work is basically land-based art. In some ways, even though of course there was technology involved, the approach is very different because of the different time that they were working in, right? So they're worth looking at. So Lin is definitely an environmental activist. She really looks at the relationship between nature and the built-up environment. The impact we have, the humanity has on the environment. So global warming and animal extinction and the disappearance of bodies of water, those are her main concerns. The materials she uses are mainly recyclable and sustainable materials. And she's generally really careful about the impact that her work has on the environment. She really focuses on how spaces should be in the future, how they influence us emotionally, and what significance they have on us. So check out her work because it's really interesting. She draws attention to, again, this relationship between humanity as someone who is increasingly destroying, altering, and suppressing the environment around us by expanding and building and all that stuff. So she's really interesting to look at in those terms, especially in like what are her strategies to draw our attention to our attitude towards the environment. So the third artist that I'm going to introduce today is Tomás Saraceno. I hope I've pronounced his name okay. So Saraceno engages with similar environmental concerns. Saraceno has really interesting strategies to again alert us to our relationship with the environment. So one of his particular concerns is these kind of floating or flying sculptures. I think he calls these aerosol sculptures, and they are powered just by air and the heat from the sun. And so they basically use no fuel other than air and sunshine. He works with a variety of experts, including balloonists. He also collaborates with indigenous communities in Argentina, where he's from. He has broken many world records by flying this one sculpture, which was flown by a pilot called Leticia Marquez. So, very, very interesting, innovative work that is offering real alternatives to our way of life that are a lot less toxic to the environment. Another super exciting project, which Saraceno is famous for, is working with spiders, different species of spiders. It's a very complex project, which I will just do a quick introduction to, but if you're interested, you should really do your own research. I think one of the last exhibitions with this whole spider project was at the Serpentine Gallery in 2023. So there's a lot of information available about that, and I think you should really check that out because it's absolutely fascinating. So as he works with spiders, he works with different species. Some of them build these webs together. Some are social, some are asocial. He works with researchers that look at this phenomena of spiders and the webs they build. I think he's kind of collaborated with people to now create the first accurate 3D models of spiders' webs. So again, bridging art and science to create artworks that are informative, advancing our knowledge of the environment and species. He works with musicians, and this idea of, because spiders don't have the capacity to hear, they communicate via tremors on the webs that they create. One of the ideas is to communicate via creating vibrations along the silk web. Really, really interesting concept. So interesting. And him and Eliasson have developed a variety of different apps that again invite the audience, which is global, to use these apps in specific ways, which again come back to the idea of this global community on one planet, and how really we need a readjustment to understanding, accepting, and honoring that relationship of a planet that we cannot replace. I hope this has kind of inspired you. I'm always inspired by art. I'm always inspired by artists and how they're constantly pushing the frontiers of what we know, of how we process information, how we live in societies, how we live on this planet. I just find it absolutely fascinating. So if you are dealing with similar ideas in your work, I would highly recommend that you have a look at these artists. I've done a super basic introduction. It's up to you to research them properly, because obviously their work is very interesting and very complex, and hopefully this will help you make decisions, everything from what kind of skills you need to develop, the techniques that you need to master, and the materials that you need to use in order to create artwork that really communicates or challenges the audience as they are looking at your work. Again, I'm going to say, just because these people employ, whole communities of experts and have a lot of money backing their projects, don't let that put you off. Find ways of using what you have learned, using what you have been inspired by in your own work, in your own way, within your limitations. So hopefully this was helpful. Thank you so much to people who have subscribed. That really, really helps me out. I wish you all the best. This is Miss A. See you in the next video. So the mowing has stopped, but there's a fly in the room. We'll just have to carry on. Sorry. Anyway, broken many, he has broken